The UCLA women's basketball season is one you don't want to miss. Your top 10 Bruins are well on their way to another Final Four run. We need you to get to Pauley to support this incredible team. Led by Lauren Betts, Gabriella Jaquez, and Kiki Rice, newcomers Gianna Neepkins and Charlize Ledger-Walker. This group plays an exciting brand of basketball and wins. The time is now to come to see these stars in action. Big-time matchups are coming. Go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today. Can't wait to see you in Westwood cheering on the Bruins.
Good afternoon. We're getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after the Guy Benson Show at 3, sometimes right after the awesome Susan Shelley from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, as was the case today. And just before the 790 KABC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5, it's Motec on Money. We're live on the air of 790 KABC, streaming live online worldwide at KABC.com. And, of course, the on-demand Motec on Money podcast, KABC.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Another wild ride in the financial markets today with stocks pulling back, Bitcoin sliding deeper into bear market territory, and precious metals rebounding after that two-day washout, as we're calling it, following the president's selection of Kevin Warsh to be the next head of the Federal Reserve. The precious metals moved higher today. In fact, gold jumped 6.1% to end at $4,903.80 an ounce. Big move in February futures. In fact, about a $300 move added to the biggest daily gain on record, and coming after two trading sessions, the same futures contract dropped a record more than $600 an ounce. Looks like today's rise for gold was the largest since March of 2009, when investors were piling into gold as other markets crashed during the financial crisis. Gold and silver settling higher for the first time in two sessions after last week's record-setting washout. Bitcoin dropping again today, and it's taking the crypto stocks along with it. Shares of Coinbase and Robinhood, for example, moving sharply lower. On the geopolitical front, tensions running high between Iran and the U.S. after U.S. Navy fighter jets shot down an Iranian drone that was approaching the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. According to the U.S. Central Command, they released a statement saying the drone aggressively approached the U.S. aircraft carrier with unclear intent and continued to fly toward the ship despite the de-escalatory measures taken by U.S. forces operating in international waters, and was blown out of the sky. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about it with one of the top military analysts these days, and that is retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, retired Marine Corps intelligence officer, national security analyst, and host of the Strategic Risk Assessment Talk podcast, also known as the Strat Podcast. And on cryptos, later this hour, we'll be joined live by Eleanor Terrett, business journalist, as well as host of the Crypto in America podcast. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works now. Joining us live, the one and only Steve Forbes, chairman, editor-in-chief of Forbes Media, which includes Forbes magazine, the author of numerous books, including How Capitalism Will Save Us. In fact, I was there for the book signing for that one. More recently, he wrote the book Inflation, What It Is, Why It Is Bad, and How to Fix It, former Republican presidential candidate. And perhaps inspired by this program, he's also host of the podcast What's Ahead with Steve Forbes, where he engages the world's top newsmakers. Steve Forbes, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Good to be with you. Thank you. Lots going on.
Yes, sir. Let's take it from the top. First of all, on this military action involving a U.S. fighter jet blowing that Iranian drone out of the sky near the Abraham Lincoln. Give us your reaction to that big news, first of all.
Well, I'm surprised the Iranians did anything that could provoke a response by the U.S., giving the assets, military assets that were moving in that area. The blunt truth is on Iran that regime, the president keeps saying he wants to negotiate. Maybe that's a ploy. But if that regime survives, that'll be a great blow to the United States, especially after the president, day after day, as we know, told those demonstrators, urged those demonstrators, go out in the street, I'm backing you up. And then at least 20,000 have been killed. Tens of thousands or more have been arrested, probably likely to be executed. This regime survives. So I think the ultimate showdown is coming, probably working with the Israelis. But that regime cannot be allowed to survive. As you know, for over 45 years, 46 years, they've been waging a war against the United States. They've killed over 1,000 of our own people over that period of time. They've murdered people throughout the world, terrorist central. So there's that regime is dedicated to terrorism, and they've violated every agreement they've made. So I think what we're going through now is a charade before we strike the knockout blow, deliver the knockout blow.
Iranian Americans here in Beverly Hills and throughout the Los Angeles area, Persians here showing tremendous support for the people of Iran, and of course want to see a change there. And looks like the son of the former Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, certainly has taken a higher profile. What do you think is going to happen if indeed there is military action ultimately, as it appears we're heading in that direction, and what the future of Iran looks like under some new leadership?
Well, it couldn't be worse than what we have now. And I think that parts of the military probably already are plotting against the regime. The regime has lost, the mullahs have lost all sense of moral authority, no legitimacy at all after what they've done. So who knows the exact scenario, but I think they're going to have an uprising within their own military, not within the Revolutionary Guards, but the regime, I think, will fall. And I think the son of the former Shah of Iran will be going back to head up an interim government. And then the other thing, though, is going to be very interesting. Can Iran stay together? As you know, there's a very large Kurdish population, other big ethnic group there. So, but I think they'll sort it out. And the U.S. and others are going to be very supportive of a transition regime and a new regime. And a lot of work has to be done to rebuild that economy. But they do have the oil revenues, and Iran and a new regime will be able to get full global price on that oil. And also, I think as things settle down, they'll also be attracting investment because they do have some very interesting oil fields.
All of these developments, of course, impacting the financial markets. You wrote the book on inflation, and you talk about inflation. Iran's currency went to practically zero, if not maybe below that at this point. The rial was hit very hard, and that was one reason why we've seen the public rise up there in Iran. And in all this, the price of gold has hit astronomical highs above 5,000. It's just below 5,000 now, rebounding after the wild gyrations we've seen the past couple of trading sessions. Silver was well above 100. It's around $84 an ounce. Give us your reaction to these epic moves in the precious metals and in the financial markets overall.
Well, in the precious metals, starting about 3 weeks ago, it went from what you might call the normal buyers, institutional buyers, user buyers. Gold, silver is now used a lot, especially for batteries. Obviously, copper, and then what you might call the individual speculators came in, the meme investors, as they're called, and ran the thing up to astronomical levels. But nothing ever goes up forever. I'm old enough to remember the dot-com boom and bust back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And so that's what you saw on Friday. That was the most violent day of trading in commodity history, especially with silver, which went down to one day $26 an ounce. But the fact that gold has come back, not the highs that it did during that wild speculation, but still very, very high from previous levels, which I think forecasts trouble for the currency markets in the months ahead, next year or so. And in terms of the stock market, the one good thing that's happening is that what you might call the breadth of the market has gone way beyond the seven sisters, or whatever name you wanted to give to the Magnificent Seven, or 10, or whatever number. And so that was a good thing. But the market is very, very richly valued still. And so what I think people should do is if you have a 401k or something like that, or an IRA, you're not about to retire, keep putting the money in. You may get a break in the market, but the markets always come back. And index funds, low cost index funds, always over time, you'll always outperform managed funds. Very few people know how to manage these things well. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work. So if you don't have that time, then go with a low-cost index fund. So expect choppy waters ahead, but I think we'll see the thing through. The U.S. economy is showing great resilience and strength, But we also have the challenge coming up. I think someday the Supreme Court's going to rule on tariffs, and that'll roil things short term. But I think it'll lead to stability in the future, because in the future, any tariffs the president wants, he's going to have to go through a legislative process, which means when something is done, it can't be changed overnight. And so people have some stability there. They won't have to know what's happening day to day.
On the Live with Steve Forbes, and on this program, we talk to the biggest fans of crypto as well as the harshest critics. And for fans of wild rides, crypto certainly has lived up to its reputation, with the Bitcoin falling deeper into bear market territory, down to around 75,000, well off its record high of 126,000, which we saw last year. Ethereum is down around 2,200. Doge at 10 cents here. What are your thoughts about crypto these days?
Well, there was a part of that, what happened to the commodities market, especially precious metals. Copper reached a new high, by the way, and that crashed on Friday. But what we see with the cryptos is it once again it's sent, as you noted, to huge highs. And in terms of Bitcoin, the defenders will say that every 3-year period, Bitcoin moves up. So even though we get these violent swings, it is always the trend line is always up. But just because of that, I always think if you're worried about currencies, go with gold. It's worked for 4,000 years as an insurance policy. And with cryptos, what I think will eventually evolve is not the kind of speculation we see now, but the creation of cryptos that can actually, eventually, the technology will be there to start using them for real transactions. And so it won't happen in the near future, but in a few years, you're going to see cryptocurrencies challenge the monopoly of governments over money. Alternative monies will start to emerge. The regulators will go bonkers on it. So that's going to be a big political issue in the months and in the years ahead. Not now, but in the future. So right now, most of those cryptos are speculative vehicles, but I think you're going to see serious cryptos emerge that could pose a challenge to the dollar and other currencies.
On the Live with Steve Forbes, and let me mention a name very familiar to you, since he's number one on the Forbes billionaires list, and that would be the one and only Elon Musk, with the big announcement this week that SpaceX has acquired XAI in a record-setting deal, as Elon Musk looks to unify AI and space travel and data centers up there too. What's your reaction to that big news? And it looks like you're gonna have to get a new list, the trillionaires list, pretty soon, from what I understand.
Yeah. Well, he is clearly a genius, and who knows what he's going to do with this next in terms of going public or something. But I think he also recognizes that this whole thing with AI, especially with data centers, that the new technologies are starting to emerge, which will challenge the huge electricity-consuming technology we see developing now. He's quite foresighted. So I think he's preparing to do big new things. I don't know what, but I know that if people can buy shares in it, they will. And thank goodness on the rocket side, thanks to him, we're ahead of the Chinese, ahead of the Russians, certainly ahead of the Europeans and in India on developing rocketry. Because we live in this unstable world. So, but we do have thousands of satellites in the atmosphere, up in space now, and I hope our government is working on ways to protect those assets if we do get a real showdown with China.
On the Live with Steve Forbes, and it's been a bit since we've chatted behind live microphones. So, what is your reaction to President Trump picking the next head of the Federal Reserve, Kevin Warsh, as we mentioned earlier? It looks like he's expressed a desire to shrink what he calls the Fed's bloated balance sheet, and he's expressed his views on how inflation should be handled and so forth. Give us your reaction to his choice.
Well, I think Kevin Warsh recognizes, I think, from what he's written in the past, that the Federal Reserve's operating assumptions are profoundly wrong. The Federal Reserve believes a growing economy causes inflation. The Federal Reserve has always had a bias against a growing, vigorous economy. And so I think he's going to change that. I like the fact that he's been inside the Fed, so he knows how that thing works and doesn't work, knows where the bodies are buried. And so that's going to be a big thing, the way the Fed looks at the world. I think he believes in a stable dollar, which is good. And as you mentioned, he's going to begin to reduce again the bloated balance sheet of the Fed, which has grossly distorted financial markets. And really, over time, what the Fed did and what other central banks did hurt lending to small businesses. And with the zero interest rate policy that the Fed had for years, and the Japanese did it on steroids, really led to the rise of massive government debt. So he's going to have his hands full, but I think he's got the right attitude, and he's not going to be captured by the Federal Reserve as Jerome Powell was. So I think the Fed is going to be in for some very interesting times. And right now, the question is, can he get through the Senate? I think he will. As for the Department of Justice still going after Jerome Powell, the current chair, I think eventually that'll just go away. Sadly, government overruns and incompetence in construction is nothing new in Washington. They're all guilty of it, and we pay the price for it.
Certainly. Here's something new. The prediction markets have really taken off nowadays with all these different platforms. And who do you like in the Super Bowl?
Well, I have no, as they say, no dog in that fight. And, I know you guys don't either. But I have a soft spot for Sam Darnold with QB for the Seahawks. He started out with the New York Jets, and sadly, New York teams have a habit of spotting real talent but not developing it. And so as soon as Darnold left New York, he came into his own. The Vikings, he was a backup with the Vikings when their quarterback was injured. He came in and did well. Vikings made a big mistake in trading him away. And so he ended up with the Seahawks, and shows he's an example of what happens when you have good coaching with real talent. And I hope the New York teams, the Jets and the Giants, take that to heart, that it's not enough to pick good players in drafts. You also have to have the people who know how to develop those players. You're doing it in your town, and I hope someday we do it in ours. So I'm going to be in a position where I have no real emotional attachment to the teams. I'm delighted that with the New England Patriots, you have a coach and a quarterback, quite the opposite of the famous Tom Brady and Belichick. But it's good to see a team come back again. But everyone says the Seahawks are favored, and we'll see what the odds are on Sunday. But the consensus is usually wrong. But I don't bet. I'd rather lose my money in the stock market.
Fantastic. Well, Steve Forbes will add the football enthusiast and analyst to your long list of credits, along with the business analyst and certainly baseball enthusiast and New York Yankees enthusiast. Steve Forbes, always an honor and pleasure to speak with you. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to join us here. Steve Forbes, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of Forbes Media, including Forbes Magazine. His latest book, Inflation, What It Is, Why It Is Bad, and How to Fix It. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Good to be with you, and it'll be fun to see the Dodgers, the Giants. They call themselves the Dodgers, but they're towering over everyone else. We'll see what they do this year.
We want to get you out here as soon as possible, too, for a book signing, and it'll be great to see you out here soon. Thank you very much for joining us live here today.
Thank you.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
The UCLA women's basketball season is one you don't want to miss. Your top 10 Bruins are well on their way to another Final Four run. We need you to get to Pauly to support this incredible team. Led by Lauren Betts, Gabriella Jaquez, and Kiki Rice, newcomers Gianna Neepkins and Charlize Ledger-Walker. This group plays an exciting brand of basketball and wins. The time is now to come to see these stars in action. Big-time matchups are coming. Go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today. Can't wait to see you in Westwood cheering on the Bruins.
Start your day with the morning jolt of Drake C. Toll.
You've never been a football coach before, so you're not allowed to talk about this. No, I can have burnt mozzarella sticks and say the chef's not working.
Then Black and Abdallah.
Adam Abdallah.
That's what we do. We rank quarterbacks.
Fired.
Okay.
And Westwood One Sports Night caps it all off.
I don't know how they're going to win, but they're going to win. We're open all night here on Westwood One.
Westwood One Sports Talk. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Not so gorgeous on Wall Street, though, today, with the Dow tumbling 167 points, 49,241. The S&P 500 down 59 at 6,918. The Nasdaq tumbling 337 at 23,255. The yield on the 10-year note is pulled back to 4.27%. The volatility index, the VIX index, the so-called Wall Street Fear Index, spiking today by 10%. The price of gold all over the place, but mostly higher today. In fact, right now at $4,946 and change, just below a 5K. Silver also on the rebound now, 56 cents at $83.86 an ounce. Platinum at $2,210 and palladium at $1,732 and change. The price of oil has been bouncing around lately too. Right now it's $63.78 a barrel in New York. Looks like Bitcoin moving deeper into bear market territory right now at around 75,666, the mark of the beast. Wow, isn't that something? Ethereum down 54 at 2,226, and Doge at the moment at 10 cents. The crypto-related stocks taking a hit today. We see Bitmine Immersion down 45 cents at 22.35. That's Tom Lee's company. And also Michael Saylor's Strategy in the spotlight, tumbling more than $6 at $133 and change. Bitto, one of the Bitcoin-related ETFs, down to $10.57, and IBIT down 92 cents at $43.30. We'll be talking cryptos and more coming up shortly with Eleanor Terrett, co-host of the Crypto in America podcast, and on geopolitics and the latest military action in the Middle East and elsewhere. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer will be joining us live here shortly. Tank Money continues here, 790 KBC. Following the latest military action around the world, tensions running high now between Iran and the U.S. after a U.S. Navy fighter jet shot down an Iranian drone that was approaching the USS Abraham Lincoln, the aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea. According to the U.S. Central Command, the Trump administration warning of possible military action to get Iran to the negotiating table. According to a statement from the Central Command spokesman today, the Iranian drone aggressively approached the U.S. aircraft carrier with unclear intent and continued to fly toward the ship despite de-escalatory measures taken by U.S. forces operating in international waters, and the drone was blown out of the sky. Elsewhere, Russia has launched its biggest aerial assault of the year on Ukraine, ending a pause on strikes on Ukraine's energy systems and dealing another blow to Ukraine during some of the winter's coldest days. President Trump recently said that he had asked the Russian leader to hold off on strikes for a week because of the frigid temperatures. Joining us live now, retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, retired Marine Corps intelligence officer, national security analyst, and host of the Strategic Risk Assessment Talk podcast, also known as the Strat Podcast. Colonel, thank you very much for coming to the line this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank.
Give us your reaction to this latest military action with this Iranian drone apparently trying to attack the Abraham Lincoln.
Very interesting, very provocative. There was a lot of things done before they shot down to try and get the drone to turn away. It didn't happen, so an F-35 shot it out of the sky. I think that's a very clear message to the Iranians. It was a Shahed 136 drone. As far as we know, it was a surveillance drone. It wasn't an attack drone, but it was doing something that the Iranians have done in the past, which is they fly drones directly over warships and then use it for our U.S. Navy warships and use it for propaganda value. Obviously, in the current situation, we're not going to let something like that happen, so we shot it down. Same day, though, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, had boats that appeared to be trying to seize a tanker going through the Straits of Hormuz, a U.S. Navy vessel,
intervened. One of our Navy warships thwarted that as well. But it just shows the Iranians being very provocative in the water at the same time that they have talks coming up with the U.S. on nuclear issues.
And, of course, tensions rising in all of this. Sounds like we have a lot of equipment over there now, this armada there. Doing anything more about the size and strength of the force that's been assembled there?
Well, it's a pretty big force. Of course, the cornerstone is the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Task Force, but there's somewhere between 15, 20 vessels, and it depends on how far afield you want to go. If you want to include the Eastern Mediterranean and look at the Red Sea as well, it gets a little bit bigger, but it's a lot of vessels, a lot of them with the Aegis anti-air capability to deal with if we were to strike, and probably strike in concert with Israel, Iran, the retaliation strike by the Iranians is a big concern. So we wanted to make sure we had all this anti-aircraft, anti-missile capability that we have on a variety of different warships and different platforms in place before we ever initiate anything. And of course, the Iranians are watching this, and this is all part of the communication that goes back and forth, which is, communicating to the Iranians, this is what we have. And that tells the Iranians that maybe they need to work a little bit harder on the diplomatic front.
So very complicated chess game playing out here. What about this possible nuclear deal that's been talked about as well? And what do you think the end game in all this will be?
We're negotiating with nuclear weapons. It's come up over and over again that ballistic missiles need to be part of this discussion. The Israelis brought that up again. Certainly we saw that in June, the ballistic missile threat. And the Iranians have said ballistic missiles will not be a discussion. As far as I can tell, it's not going to be a discussion this week, but it is a big issue. It's a big concern to us, to the Israelis, certainly to all the regional players in the Gulf. I think they'll get something done. The fact that the ballistic missiles is not part of this discussion could make the Iranians actually more conciliatory on making concessions in the nuclear front. We'll see, but there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm not holding my breath.
All right, well, we have time. Let me ask you about Russia's latest attack on Ukraine, what's been described as the largest aerial assault of the war on Ukraine, hitting that country's energy system during this very cold winter there. What do we need to know about that?
Well, 460 drones, 70 ballistic missiles going after energy grid systems, energy infrastructure during this incredibly cold snap that the Ukrainians are suffering right now. And this actually is an affront to President Trump because he had agreed, thought he had agreement with Putin that he wouldn't do this attack or that he would do an attack during this time frame. He thought he had a full week. Putin, as he has done many times in the past, has a nice conversation with President Trump and then turns around and launches one of these massive strikes against Ukraine, going after the population, going after the energy grid. And it puts President Trump in a very difficult position. And frankly, as we've seen in his comments and statements, he's getting more and more irritated with Putin and Russia.
All right, let's talk about Venezuela. Anything we need to know about the latest moves there?
Well, interesting. It's more of a business thing. The oil market is being very much impacted by this. We're hearing from refineries in the U.S. that they're not sure they can actually take all the oil that's going to be coming out of Venezuela, and that oil is being shifted to other markets. One of the big markets is this agreement we just had with India, where we dropped our tariff rates. In exchange, they said they would not buy Russian oil. Part of filling that gap is the idea of diverting Venezuelan oil either directly to India or to other places where it offsets and more oil can get to India from non-Russian sources. Very interesting. Very interesting what's going on. And, of course, playing a heck of a game with oil prices worldwide. But interesting, the Russian oil prices, I've heard that some of the Russian oil prices are down to $22 a barrel. They can't sell their oil. They're having to sell it at a huge discount, and that goes into their ability to pay for the war. Rather interesting strategy from an economic warfare standpoint.
Another country facing severe economic pressure in all this is Cuba, and there's a lot of talk there could be changes there under the weight of economic strain. What's happening there in Cuba now?
Well, the Cuban economy has basically been dependent, keeps running on Venezuelan oil, and there is no Venezuelan oil coming in. Of course, a lot of that oil was going to Cuba, and then was just being cross-decked and sold over to China. So a lot of the oil was paying for things in Cuba, but the oil itself wasn't actually sitting in Cuba. Now Cuba's had that cut off essentially cut off by what it's done there. Some oil is still going over to China, but the Cuba angle is cut off, and that's putting tremendous pressure on the regime there. And they too are looking at the diplomatic route, what to do with the U.S. So we may see some rather interesting discussions with Cuba. We might see some big changes. I don't want to predict too much what's going on, but we've definitely done something to Cuba that we haven't been able to do in quite some time, and that is put phenomenal economic pressure on that government to make concessions. And I'm not predicting regime change, although there are many out there who say it could happen. I think a lot of other things have to happen first, but you could see some big changes in terms of how Cuba's been running and how it operates, in this hemisphere.
See it tonight, read about it tomorrow, but hear it now on Motec on Money, live on the air with retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, based here in Southern California, retired Marine Corps intelligence officer, national security analyst, host of the Strategic Risk Assessment Talk podcast, also known as the Strat Podcast. Colonel, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank.
The UCLA women's basketball season is one you don't want to miss. Your top 10 Bruins are well on their way to another Final Four run. We need you to get to Pauly to support this incredible team. Led by Lauren Betts, Gabriela Jaquez, and Kiki Rice, newcomers Gianna Neepkins and Charlize Ledger-Walker. This group plays an exciting brand of basketball and wins. The time is now to come to see these stars in action. Big-time matchups are coming. Go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today. Can't wait to see you in Westwood cheering on the Bruins.
It's the biggest game on the planet, and nobody breaks it down like Jim Rome.
Super Bowl run. Who do you think will be the last one standing this year?
Fearless debate and the best callers in sports.
I don't care what you say. Defense wins Super Bowl.
That defense absolutely is Super Bowl caliber. The quarterbacking sure as hell wasn't.
He's the Spitfire of sports smack.
A lot to get to, and I'm not sure you're going to like all of it. Honestly, I don't even care if you like all of it or not. I have a job to do.
The Jim Rome Show.
Get up in here.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Motec on Money continues, 790 KABC. Another rough day for cryptos. Looks like Bitcoin went below 73,000 today, hitting the lowest we've seen in more than a year. Bitcoin down about 40% since hitting a record high above 126,000 just last October. We saw Bitcoin move lower, Ethereum also taking another hit, and the list goes on. Also, shares of Coinbase and Robinhood also moving lower in all this. Shares of Strategy, which kind of functions as a leverage bet on Bitcoin, also moving lower, down to around 133, down more than $6 today. Bitmine Immersion, that's Tom Lee's stock, which focuses on Ethereum, also pulling back down 45 cents at 22 and change. Joining us live now to take a look at all this, Eleanor Terrett is with us, business journalist and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast. Eleanor, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Good to be with you, Frank.
Wow. A lot going on here. So take it from the top. Give us your assessment here of this big washout in the cryptos in recent weeks.
That's right. So crypto market, you got it in one. It's under pressure again with prices sliding sharply today. Bitcoin's down again at around 74 or 75,000. It hasn't been this low since Donald Trump was put in office back in November of 2024, Frank. So we're seeing lows we haven't seen in quite some time. It's making traders a little jittery, but as I keep saying, these OGs who have been in crypto for a long time, these traders, these people who have been holding crypto, holding Bitcoin for some years, they're not worried about it. And I keep saying this, it's fascinating to actually be in this crypto space and talk to these traders and talk to these people who have been holding, and they just say, it's volatile. This happens, and we saw it in October, we saw it in December, and we're seeing it again now. But just to give you some context here, the total market value is down just over 3% to about $2.5 trillion, the entire global crypto cap there, global market cap. It's wiped out nearly $50 billion in just a matter of hours we've seen over the last 24 hours. And that's kind of despite, we've had some positive news in the last, I'd say 12 hours, Frank. The government shutdown came to an end. We've seen some positive news picking up out of the, Senate Banking Committee, Senate Agriculture Committee. We're starting to see some movement now on that crypto market structure bill, the Clarity Act. So slow progress there, but there is some movement starting to pick up once again. But once we're talking about Bitcoin, institutional selling is a big part of this as well, putting the price under pressure. We saw about $2.8 billion flowing out of U.S. spot Bitcoin ETFs over the past couple of weeks. And that fear index, our fear and greed index, remains really high. Investors are also rotating into safer assets like gold and silver. I'm sure you've mentioned this on the show. We've seen those prices skyrocketing, particularly silver, and both of which are surging today. So the next key catalyst will be the upcoming Federal Reserve meeting. We did get some key insight into who we might be seeing at the helm of the Federal Reserve last week when President Trump named Kevin Warsh as his would-be next successor if he gets through his Senate confirmation hearing. But it's a volatile time right now, Frank, but it always seems to be a volatile time in crypto.
Certainly, and you've hit on all the important points, and we called it a washout last week. So the crypto certainly reacted, it seemed, to the selection of Kevin Warsh as the next Fed chair. What are the crypto people saying about Kevin Warsh?
That's right. Well, it could be that he is a hawk. He's said some things in the past that may point towards him being more of a hawkish Fed chair than a dovish one. But when it comes to crypto, he's actually pretty savvy when it comes to the technology. There were some clips going around on social media of him saying he understands the technology to a certain degree. He was saying how he had a conversation with A16 founder Mark Andreessen, who actually showed him the Bitcoin white paper, and he was very impressed by it. So I think he understands it from a technological point of view. Is he a Bitcoin bull? I don't think we can go quite that far at the moment, Frank, but I think having a chairman, Federal Reserve chairman, someone who is leading the head of monetary policy in the United States, someone who understands Bitcoin and crypto as a whole, will be a positive for the space. But I think how he really feels about it will be, remain to be seen. And I'm sure he'll get asked a few questions surrounding cryptocurrency and digital assets in his confirmation hearing, especially as crypto is such a hot topic in Congress and in D.C. at the moment.
On there live with Eleanor Terrett, who speaks fluent crypto and talks to the biggest names in the crypto world, including Michael Saylor and Tom Lee Wright. What about those names here? Strategy, Michael Saylor's stock has tanked to around 133, and Tom Lee's Bitmine Immersion down to around 22 and change. Quite a bit of unrealized losses, certainly. It looks like they're buying the dip, though, right? Tell us what they've been saying.
It has, yeah. And I was actually just at a conference in New York where Tom Lee was, and, he's still remaining bullish. I have to admire these gentlemen who, pretty much go all in on their playbook, right? You've got Michael Saylor, who is leading the charge on Bitcoin with his strategy, and you've got Tom Lee, who is leading the charge on Ethereum with Bitmine, and they kind of become the sort of the unofficial spokespeople for, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Whether their companies are going to continue to do well in the long term remains to be seen. But they do a good job of kind of talking up their playbook. And as you mentioned, they are buying the dip. They continue to buy Bitcoin and Ethereum. So we'll see how that works out for them. The thing I was at today, the conference I was at today was a tokenization conference. So a little bit different than just a conference about Bitcoin and Ethereum. Tokenization is all the rage on Wall Street right now. You hear from BlackRock's Larry Fink. He wants to tokenize everything from ETFs to money market funds. It's really putting everything on the blockchain, right? So Wall Street is dying to get involved. We had some guidance from the Securities and Exchange Commission the other day about tokenized equities. Basically, everybody, this was a very highly attended conference from a Wall Street perspective. Lots of institutional investors at this one. Did see Tom Lee there, as I mentioned. But crypto is, as I mentioned on another session we had, Frank, 2026 is the year of the institutional investor. And I think we saw some of that today at the Ondo conference in New York City.
How interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And of course, we've primarily focused on Bitcoin and Ethereum, the big names. But what about some of these other names, the meme coins and others? Doge, for example, Shiba Inu and Solana and so forth. Any of those on your radar screen? And have they had, looks like they've had mostly dramatic moves on the downside as well. But is anybody talking about some of these other coins now?
Not so much in the narrative at the moment. Usually when Bitcoin falls, most of these other coins fall as well. When Bitcoin rises, rising tide tends to lift all ships. But in terms of how we're going to classify these coins, that seems to be more of how these tokens are coming up in conversation now. A lot of these tokens are going to be considered commodities under this new bill that's going through Congress right now. So a lot more jurisdiction for the Commodity Futures Trading Commission as opposed to the Securities and Exchange Commission. We're expecting a lot of oversight for the SEC with tokenized securities, a lot of oversight for the CFTC with everything else. Meme coins are sort of a question mark right now. We think, at least in the Senate Ag's version of the Clarity Act, they're looking at having more jurisdiction over meme coins. So sort of these more speculative trades we've seen. I can name a few, but off the top of my head, I've got some rude ones on my mind, so I'm not going to say this on live radio. But we've talked about them here on the show before, Frank. But it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time to be in cryptocurrency right now, as it always is.
Right. So you also cover the regulatory part of all this. I guess the CFTC chair, Michael Salig, had some comments about this bill moving through Congress, making the U.S. the gold standard for crypto regulation. So what stands out as the next big thing as far as regulation is concerned?
He did. So I had the pleasure and the privilege of sitting down with Michael Selig and Chairman of the SEC, Paul Atkins, in a fireside chat last week. And they're both on the same page that they want to really deliver the minimum dose of effective regulation is the words that they both used. They're very gung-ho about rolling back this red tape that really was put into place under the former chairmans, Gary Gensler at the SEC and Ross Benham at the CFTC. They really want these markets to grow and thrive, and they want to future-proof it so that future regulators can't come in and kind of undo the work that they've been doing. Chairman Selig is very hot on prediction markets. He's rolled back a 2024 initiative that would have effectively banned prediction markets.
Eleanor, thank you very much. Wish we had more time, but we'll have to stop there. Eleanor Terrett, business journalist and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast, live with us here on Motac on Money on 790 KABC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KABC News Blitz with Randy Wang. 790 KABC.
The UCLA men's basketball season's in full swing, and we need you to get to Pauley Pavilion to support the Bruins. Don't miss a single chance to see this year's exciting team, led by Donovan Dent, Eric Daly Jr., Sky Clark, and Tyler Bilodeau. Pauley Pavilion, presented by Westcon Financials, the home of the greatest tradition in all of college basketball. We can't wait to have you join us as the Bruins continue to build on that legacy. With big-time matchups, go to UCLABruins.com/tickets to secure your seats today before it's too late. Let's get Pauley rocking.